40 years. That's how long my husband and I had been married. 40 years of scraped knees and hospital rooms, of layoffs and late-night prayers, of raising kids when money was tight and love had to stretch. We didn't have much, but we had each other. And to us, that felt like enough. So when our daughter insisted on throwing us a big anniversary party, we agreed. Not because we wanted the attention, but because she sounded proud. "You deserve this," she said. "All of it." The party was held at a small event hall just outside town. Nothing fancy. White tablecloths. Soft music. Photos of our life together displayed on a long table, our wedding picture, our first apartment, our kids as toddlers. I remember thinking, this is what it feels like to make it. Family filled the room. Friends from church. Old co-workers. Laughter echoed like it used to in our house years ago. Then my son-in-law stood up. He tapped his glass with a spoon, smiling confidently. He always had that kind of presence, the type of man who liked to be seen as generous, charming, dependable. "I'd like to say a few words," he announced. My daughter beamed. My husband squeezed my hand. I smiled too, until I noticed the look on my son-in-law's face. It wasn't warm. It was calculated. "As we celebrate 40 years of marriage," he said, "I think it's time we talk about honesty." The room grew quiet. My heart skipped. Because something in his tone told me this wasn't a toast. It was a setup. And whatever he was about to say wasn't meant to honor us. The room was so quiet I could hear the hum of the lights overhead. My son-in-law smiled again, but this time it didn't reach his eyes. "Marriage," he said, pacing slightly, "is built on trust. And trust means knowing the truth, especially when money is involved." My stomach tightened. Money. Of all the things he could have mentioned, that was the one subject that had caused tension in our family before. Not between my husband and me, but between generations. "I think it's important everyone here understands," he continued, "that not all sacrifices are what they seem." A murmur rippled through the guests. I looked at my daughter. Her hands were clenched in her lap. She still wouldn't look at me. My son-in-law pulled out a folded document from his jacket pocket. "This," he said, holding it up, "is a loan agreement." My heart pounded. He claimed, right there in front of everyone, that years ago, we had borrowed money from him and never paid it back. He said he had helped us when my husband lost his job, when medical bills piled up, when we were too proud to admit we couldn't manage. That part was true. But what he didn't say, what he left out, was everything else. He didn't say that we had repaid him in cash, quietly, month after month. He didn't say that he had refused receipts. He didn't say he'd told us, "Family doesn't keep score." Instead, he said, "After 40 years of marriage, maybe it's time to pay what you owe." Gasps filled the room. I felt my face burn with shame. My husband stood up so fast his chair tipped backward. "That's enough," he said, his voice shaking. "You know that's not true." My son-in-law shrugged. "Then explain the paperwork." I realized then. This wasn't about money. It was about control. And he'd chosen the one night meant to celebrate our love. To publicly tear us apart. My legs felt weak, but I stood anyway. "I think we should take a break," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. But my son-in-law raised his hand. "No," he said. "Let's finish this." That's when my daughter finally spoke. "Please," she whispered. "Just stop." Her voice cracked. Every instinct in me rushed toward her. I knew that sound. I'd heard it when she was a child, when she was scared but didn't know how to ask for help. My son-in-law turned to her, his smile tightening. "You knew this was coming." She looked at the floor. That told me everything. Later, in a quiet hallway outside the main room, my daughter broke down. "He's drowning in debt," she sobbed. "Bad investments. Credit cards. He said if people knew you owed him, it would make him look protected." I felt something inside me snap. "So he humiliated us to save himself?" I asked. She nodded. "He said you'd understand. That you've always been strong." Those words hurt more than his accusations. Back inside, guests whispered. Some avoided our eyes. Others looked confused, uncomfortable, trapped in a moment that shouldn't belong to them. My husband reached for my hand. "We paid him back," he said firmly. "And we can prove it." My son-in-law laughed. "Cash. No records." convenient. That's when I realized something painful. He never expected us to fight back. He expected silence. I walked to the table with our old photos, the wedding picture, the tiny apartment, the children growing year by year. We survived without his help, I said loudly. And we don't owe him our dignity. The room stilled. I turned to my daughter. And you don't owe him your loyalty at the cost of your truth. Tears streamed down her face. For the first time that night, my son-in-law stopped smiling. My husband reached into his jacket pocket with trembling hands. I didn't want to do this tonight, he said quietly. But you left us no choice. He pulled out an old envelope, creased, worn, held together with tape that had yellowed with age. I recognized it instantly. I'd nearly thrown it away years ago. Inside were handwritten notes. Dates. Amounts. Small, careful entries written in my husband's steady handwriting. Every payment. Every month. Every dollar we had paid back, in cash. I kept track, my husband said, his voice breaking. Because I was raised to honor my debts, even when someone says paperwork doesn't matter. A few guests leaned forward. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." My son-in-law's face tightened. That proves nothing. But then I stepped forward. And this does, I said. From my purse, I pulled out my phone. I hadn't planned to use it. I didn't even know I still had the messages. But there they were, old texts from him, buried deep. Don't worry about receipts. Family doesn't need contracts. You're almost done paying me back. I handed the phone to the woman standing closest to me. She read it aloud before I could stop her. The room erupted. Gasps. Shock. Anger. My son-in-law backed up a step. Those could be taken out of context. My daughter stepped forward then, her face pale, her voice shaking but firm. No, she said. They can't. She turned to the room. He told me he planned this. He said embarrassing my parents would make people feel sorry for him. That it would protect his image. The silence that followed was heavy and final. My son-in-law opened his mouth, but nothing came out. My husband wrapped an arm around me. 40 years of marriage had taught us this. Truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs time. Guests began to leave quietly, offering soft apologies, gentle hugs. The celebration was over. But something else had begun. My son-in-law left the hall alone. No dramatic exit. No shouting. Just the quiet realization that his control was gone, and everyone had seen it. My daughter stood frozen in the middle of the room, shaking. I didn't know how to stop him, she whispered to me. I thought keeping quiet would keep the peace. I held her face in my hands, the same way I did when she was little. Peace that costs you your soul isn't peace, I said. That night, she went home with us. Not as a child running away, but as a woman finally choosing herself. In the weeks that followed, the truth unraveled quickly. Friends distanced themselves from my son-in-law. His financial lies surfaced. His charm stopped working once people knew who he really was. My daughter filed for separation. It wasn't easy. There were tears. Doubts. Nights when she wondered if she'd overreacted. But every morning, she woke up lighter. As for our anniversary? We celebrated it again, quietly. Just my husband and me, sitting at our old kitchen table, eating takeout, laughing at how life never turns out the way you expect. 40 years didn't mean we were perfect. It meant we stayed honest when it hurt. We stood together when it was uncomfortable. And we refused to let someone else rewrite our story. Here's the lesson I want every parent watching to hear. Your children are watching how you handle betrayal. Your silence teaches them. Your courage does too. That night wasn't the end of our marriage celebration. It was the moment our family finally learned what love really protects, and what it doesn't excuse. 40 years gave us wrinkles, memories. And the strength to say, enough.